Back. We're back. Artist to Art. I'm Aaron Jack. We're going to be live with Lewis Martin. So here we go. Artist to Art. There we go. Flying away. We're back on live. Number 49 of this discussion series. Opening it up. And this is exciting. Exciting. Welcome. Uh, Welcome, Angelica. Welcome, Ghost. Hey!
What's going on?
It's going well, going well. Welcome to this brand new episode.
Well,
Sorry.
congratulations. Wow, 49. That's a big number.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I've learned so much, and I'm learning more every moment. I mean, just having you on is an honor today, and so thank you. I
Ah,
appreciate it.
you're so welcome. Well, thank you for having me on. And yeah, it's amazing how the world has contracted, yet we're like expanding every which way we can, right?
Right? I mean you have your own podcast series. Why don't you tell us, like, you've got your own podcast series, you're an artist, you're doing art coaching, you're doing a myriad of things. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of that?
Awesome. Well, thanks. Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot like you and other artists during COVID, I realized that, whoa, we have so many tools at our disposal to do this, you know what I mean, to connect virtually. So I have a podcast, Studio Confessions, where I interview artists and culture makers. And before I used to invite people to my house and we'd have tea, coffee, and we'd have a conversation. Very cool. But then this happened, and I was like, what am I gonna do? And then I'm like, oh, right, they invented Zoom, and now I can reach people in, Russia. I can speak to people in Mexico. So it's been amazing. So I have a podcast. I also
Wow.
go
Mhm.
live every Sunday and Wednesday where I collage live, which is really fun because people really like to see things happening, and that's been really, really fun. Been really, really fun. Yeah.
That's so interesting. So you're doing these collages, you're making the podcast. How are you balancing it?
It's really funny. I've always identified as an artist, so it almost feels like I'm doing it anyway, right? So you mentioned the art coaching. I also do art coaching, and the way that came about was, I've had a gallery and I've worked with tons of artists, and I found myself coaching all of these artists in the process, right? Because as a curator, that's what you do. You're holding people's hands and you're bringing them to the fray and making sure that they feel visible. That's coaching. So it just I was doing it already, so it felt right to kind of streamline it and offer it as a service to people that I don't necessarily work with on a curatorial level. And it's been really great. But as we were saying earlier, talking about balance and depletion of energy, because you can do so much in a day. You can only do, a few interviews a day before you're just like, um, I make sure, and this is another thing that I learned really early on, as artists, we're never not working. Even if you're just sitting there on your couch looking at a magazine, you're working. Like your mind is going places, you know what I mean? So to anyone who's not an artist, they might read that as like lazy. You're working. You know what I mean?
For sure.
We're being called lazy. I think I lost you a little
So
bit.
is that your first piece of art coaching advice? Oh yeah, yeah. You're back? We're back. Yeah. Um. So is that your first piece of art coaching
My
advice?
apartment.
You're not lazy if
So I'm gonna
you're
I'm gonna give
reading
you
a
a little
magazine.
tour.
Oh yeah, yeah. Good. Show us around.
Well, my husband's in the studio right now, so he that's where he does his 9 to 5. I think I can stay here. Okay, so I'll show you actually really quick.
Oh, cool.
I'm in New York, and I'm really lucky to have like a really nice view, which I lived in a basement for 10 years, so this is very fulfilling. So that's Manhattan on the left, and that's Queens on the right.
Wow,
So it's
wow. And you're
so
in
it's
Brooklyn.
been I'm in Brooklyn, yeah, in Williamsburg. It's really really an interesting space to be in.
Yeah. What makes it interesting for you?
It has a lot of history and it's very complicated. So it's one of the first neighborhoods in Brooklyn to be gentrified. So it was an artist colony, and then the condos, like the one I'm not in a condo, but these buildings came up, and everyone was displaced. My husband's actually from this neighborhood, so he grew up in this neighborhood. He used to going up to his apartment with his parents, the drug dealers would ask people to move because it was a family coming through. So I mean, it was like this palpable change, right? Um, so when we moved back to the neighborhood, it was really interesting and kind of rewarding for him because this wasn't designed for him. It was designed for someone, a rich person, affluent. It wasn't for a Dominican kid to grow up and be here. So that's really fun. But it's also kind of like a bubble, because everyone here is like under 40. Like I'm the oldest person in the neighborhood, not really, but everyone's young here because New York City is a young city. It eats you and shoots you out. So when you're old, you don't want to be here. So there's, like every city, every space, it has its own gravitational pull, and it's not reality, or it's not what you would experience in LA or Wisconsin. I don't know. So it's an interesting place to be for now. I don't think I want to die here, but
What, where, how did you end up there? Like, was it just because of I mean, was it because of your husband or like what,
in Williamsburg.
uh, or in New York City in general? Like, I mean, the art world and you were doing art interviews of some,
Yeah,
I mean,
so
right? Was that?
yeah, so I'm from LA originally, and uh, I grew up watching PBS, Channel 13 or whatever, and I would always see these like documentaries on like the history of New York and history of Paris. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna move to New York or Paris one of these days. So it was just easier logistically to move to New York. So I moved to New York at 19, right after graduation. And it was at the height of gentrification, so the only place you could find affordable rent was in Williamsburg. So I ended up here, and that was in 2000. That was about 20 years ago. Um, and yeah, it's just where you land, And before then, I was an educator at a few museums as a teenager, so that kind of opened doors left and right when I moved to New York, and it was just kind of an easy transition, luckily. And then I met my husband like a year later, and we've been hanging out ever since.
Wow. Sounds like a wonderful story
Thank
you've had
you.
there.
Yeah, it's been
Wow.
great. It's been amazing.
Wow. So how did you start your podcast? Like how did that come about?
So that was a direct response to the death of Anthony Bourdain. I'm not a fanboy of anybody. I'm really not like a groupie, but I watched his show religiously. He had a show. If you're not familiar with him, he's a cook who also wrote a book that was very sensational because he was very honest about the practices in New York City kitchens. And uh, and then he had a show, and his show was very educational. And it was about food, but really at the heart of it, I think it was about people and connection and community and how food brings people together. So when he died, I really felt like there was like a void. Like, oh my God, like, all right, this is a call to action. Like there needs to be some light. So I thought, okay, I'll take this call. Um, I'm literally in the bathroom floor. I just started creating a voice communique about how I had just gone to Colombia, the country, Medellin, and had gotten a show on the fly by just calling somebody and saying, "Hey, I'm an artist. I have collages, and I'd love to show them in your space." I sent like 22 people responded, but one person responded, and I got a show. And it was just because we spoke the same language, because we spoke the same language of art. So it really felt like, oh, this is literally what this guy was talking about. Like I'm living it, and I can share that with people. So that was the impetus of the show, and I am 88 episodes in, and it's been very rewarding and very, I've been able to speak at conferences and just meet really great people. And I think the mission for me with that is just kind of giving platform to people who don't have it as much or whatever, you know? But really just talking to people who want to talk to me, you know, because it isn't the same if you're just promoting somebody. But like I want to talk to you, I want to hear about your project, and you want to hear about my projects. That's exciting, right? There's real chemistry there. So that's the whole thing of the podcast.
That's so beautiful. Now you go on Zoom and then you're like asking people, you're on Zoom and then you're putting that into what platforms? Like how do you go from Zoom into your different
It's
aspects?
the
Because I know there
worst.
might be some people out there who just need, just a little bit of like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Because I think more people should go and talk to each other, find
Oh
ways to
my
talk
God,
to each other.
yes. Absolutely. So if you have an iPhone, even if you don't, I have an iPhone, so it's really easy because there's a memo, a voice memo, which you can do so much with, right? But aside from that, the one that I started with was Anchor, and it's this app where you can literally start your podcast, and you have a podcast, and they distribute it for you. It's it's really great for beginners. After you graduate, maybe a year in, you should go a little bit more pro because there's some issues about distribution and copyright, which is way too complicated for me. But I understood. I changed it. I went somewhere else. So now I'm with Simplecast. Uh, but it's slightly technical. But I'm the type of person that would rather get something done than be perfect, right? So through this whole Zoom thing, my sound quality has gone a little bit, but I'm showing up and I'm connecting with people and I'm amplifying people's voices. So I'll take the hit a little bit. Um, but yeah, so you just record, you go through Zoom and then you put it on YouTube and it converts into an audio file and that's what you present. I mean, it's super simple. Like I wouldn't be able to explain it because I have to like relearn it every time I do it. But you can go on YouTube and it's just such an easy thing to do, you know, and fairly
Wow.
inexpensive considering that like you have your own radio station, you know?
That's so cool. I've been ever since I talked to Sergio, how I
Yes,
connected to. So thank you, Sergio, when and if
absolutely.
you watch.
He's the best.
um, so he was talking about, like the podcast, and then he has these different ways to get it out there. Um, and that helps like put artists out there onto the map. Um, how do you find yourself in that mix of getting artists out there and then you have your own art practice and then like where does that come in your own voice, like
Oh,
what is that for you as a podcaster, your voice, and then also like your voice as an artist?
that's a really great question, and I think it's kind of complicated. So I'm a big believer in pop psychology, right? Um, I come from like a broken family. My parents were never together. I've never seen them hug or kiss. So I have a tendency of segmentating things, of separating things, right? Okay, this goes here, this goes there. But the truth of the matter is it's all connected. So when I started my podcast, I'm like, okay, it's going to be something completely in and of itself. My artwork is complete in and of itself. But that's kind of bullshit. It's like everything is connected. And once you kind of realize what part of that goes into that other part, it just flows. So with my podcast in the beginning, I was kind of like, okay, I don't want to talk about myself. I'm going to talk about this artist so I can promote them. But the truth of the matter is that it literally is a flow of going back and forth and being able to, oh, what? You're in Pittsburgh? I drove through Pittsburgh. It's beautiful, you know? So this kind of it's like tennis, really. Um, so the more I allowed that, the more I realized that, oh, I can be very confident in my work and really put in the work and say, look at my collage, and not be egotistical or not sound egotistical because I'm comfortable with me, right? Like I'm literally wearing my artwork right now. You know what I mean?
Cool.
Like before, I think I would have felt like, what a self promoter. But no, I'm saying like, look, I have something to show you. I have something to tell you. You know what I mean? And you have to be comfortable with that because now I'm hot. But like as artists, like we really have this calling to share. Like we're not meant to like paint or doodle like in a vacuum. Like no, it's really about doing this, right? This connection, interaction.
That's so interesting. Like the art as like a connecting factor, right? Have you found like other ways that you're able to connect with people? So you have like your podcast, your art. Like, how are you able to connect with people like in relation to those things?
In every single way. So, I mean, I think, as I was telling you, I've always identified as an artist. Like, I was told I was an artist before I even realized I was an artist. So, I feel like everything I do is art related, right? If I choose to cook right now, that's going to be art because I'm literally kind of like making choices and decisions as an artist, right? Like, oh, what how can I make this come alive? Like that's our tendency. It really is, you know? So I find that every single opportunity is kind of a reflection, you know. So I'm a big mystic. I love the tarot cards. I study the tarot cards, and I feel that all of the collages I make are opportunities for reflection. So I might not know what they're about when I'm making them, but when someone looks at it, they might see, oh, that reminds me of my dad, or that reminds me of, you know, my visit to New York or whatever. But that's how the artist is connects you, right? Because there's no initiation. You just are part of it as you look at it.
Hmm. That's so beautiful to look at, like the making and that process,
Yeah.
as that form of connection and also as a form to like talk about what's happening. Um, do you ever find yourself like in like, oh, I need to talk about this, or is it kind of just like as it flows through you? Or like what kind of
Yes. So that's that's a very heavy question for me, especially right now, with the pandemic, with the injustices. I'm Mexican. I was born in LA, but there's so much ugliness in the world, right? And there's so much reason to fight, and there's so much reason to talk about things. But I think part of being an artist also is knowing your voice, knowing your strength. And I know I'm not a warrior. I'm not the type of person that's going to go protest. My protest is literally thriving for other people to see that, look, I did it and you can do it too. And this is how I did it. That's just the way that I am. That's my DNA, and I can fight that. Um, so I trust that my work will lead me to the messages that I have to deliver, right? So no matter what I'm working with, the message will be there, right? Because it's not me, honestly. Like as artists, sometimes we're really fed the ego thing, like, oh my God, you're so talented, blah 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 blah. But we're kind of antennas. Like the other day, I'm doing this thing called September collage, where every day you make a collage and there's a prompt, and it's been fantastic. These two women started it, and one of the prompts was a bridge, and I thought, okay, a bridge. And I got stuck, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna work on another one. I was working, and then there was a mushroom and a hand, and I was like, oh, look, they kind of want to touch each other. So I said, oh, the mushroom is the bridge, right? It's LSD, psilocybin, and I was like, I didn't do that. That was just there. I just taped it together. So I think as artists, if we are receptive to these things, these things will happen. They will happen. I think it's about trust, honestly.
could you talk about that process of trust for you and your process?
Sure. Yeah. I think a lot of people always need validation, right? And we don't trust anything unless we have the immediate validation or we have something tangible, right? And honestly, as I said, I kind of come from a turbulent background, so my survival was my validation. Oh, I'm here. Oh, I get to have a safe space where I can collage. Yeah, that's trust. Like I have to trust that I will always have that. And it's served me well, right? Uh, when I came to New York, I was 19. I didn't know anybody. I said, I don't care. I don't want to be here. There's earthquakes, there's riots, forget it. So I came to New York, and I literally looked at my tourist book and saw all the museums and sent them my resume. I had a cover letter and a letter of recommendation and my resume, and I had to mail that. Like that's how it worked in 2000. I had to mail it to them. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to worry. In 3 weeks, if I don't have a job, I'll just go back. But I'm going to trust that this is going to happen. And lo and behold, one one museum got back to me, and I got hired and I was able to stay and that was it, you know, and I know that even if that would have happened, I would have found another way to stay because that's where I felt I needed to be. And I needed to trust that, you know?
Wow. That's so beautiful. So that one thing that just like I've got 3 weeks like figured out, and
Yeah.
then you were able to do it.
And I mean, you know, I think we have this very like American narrative where it's like, yeah, you know, you burn the boat, so there's no way back. Yeah, maybe. If that works for you, then totally go with that analogy. But if you are on a different journey, then lean into that. You know, trust your journey because your journey is not going to be the same as mine and vice versa. And that's the beautiful part, right? Like, wow, check out how we got here, but we're all here, which is really nice, you know?
Isn't that like it's such a interesting and beautiful thing? Like as we're all here, like on this live video, just like people are watching this now and then later on, and then it's kind of like how we got to this place right now, just watching this, or you know, or just like and the two of us chatting, like how all the things that fell into place in order for us to chat, to connect, you know, connect and be connected, and all the technological advancements for us to be here. It's like,
And through a
uh,
pandemic,
and
you know,
through
like
yeah,
who would have thought?
well, this wouldn't have been happening if it weren't for the
Correct.
pandemic. I don't think so. You know, I don't. I mean, for me, I don't know that I'd be on Instagram Live without the pandemic. So,
You're
um,
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I mean, it's amazing what you've done. So you say this is like your 48th, 49th?
yeah, 40. I think that's 49. 49. I'm gonna hit 50 on Thursday with Kat from Create Magazine.
I mean, wow. You know what I mean? Uh, yeah. I kind of wonder if we could see ourselves right before and forget about the context of the pandemic and just be like, look, in a few months, you're going to be doing this. Oh, and there's going to be a pandemic. You know, you'd freak out if you just kind of like, no, I'm just going to let it happen. It'll happen, you know?
Right? It it's so interesting and strange to think about like how do we I was just listening to 99% Invisible about like what is it to have that like boredom and like you like hitting that place of boredom, and like what do we do when like nothing else, and like this pandemic being a natural experiment of boredom, and what comes from that. So I guess that's my question for you is like what are some big things that came for you from this whole pandemic?
Oh my God, everything. You know, I've always been a recluse. I'm a hermit. Like I live in a very exciting city, but I don't really leave my house. Yeah, me and my husband like live on an island of our own in a bubble, which has served us well, I think, because that's just our nature, right? When you trust your nature, you'll be fine. So when this happened, it was kind of just like, okay, just remember to wash your hands and be very careful, and we can't see family for a bit. Other than that, it kind of just we sailed into it, right? And I think this magnified everything. It magnified our relationships, it magnified our fears, it magnified our habits, positive and negative. So to be able to recognize what works and what doesn't really help. Like I've been preparing for this all my life, honestly. I have like stacks of books, you know what I mean? Like I've been I don't know. I was prepared. So there was no boredom there. And luckily, my husband has been able to work from home. So he's occupied and I can do my thing, you know. But also, I think just like you stepping up, right? Having the opportunity and the courage to step up and present and connect with people on a very visible level and getting over ourselves. You know, we were just talking about this before. I think what came, okay, this is the short of a long answer. What came from the pandemic is I got over myself. Like, it's fine. This is me. I don't care. I have a big forehead. I have a shiny forehead. You know, like that's it. Let me make some art. Let's chat. And once you do that, everything opens up, right? Because no one can use your insecurities against you if you're comfortable with them.
Right. That's such an interesting thing because I know we have a lot of artists who are watching that might be a little self-conscious of
Oh
putting
yeah.
themselves in front of the camera. Um, that sounds like pretty good advice.
Yeah, totally, totally. I mean, I think there's a good amount of delusion that needs to happen, and part of it will help you get to this like, okay, I'm over myself, or the other part will just keep you delusional and you're still scared behind the delusion, you know? Lisa's like, hey, me. Um, but I think once you just get over yourself, everything just becomes easier. And it's easier said than done. You know what I mean? Like I'm 40. Like it took me 40 years and a pandemic to get over myself, you know? But I already had that list of things that were driving me crazy about myself. And the moment I was just like, setting this on fire, you know? And I mean, and again, I think it also takes a lot to do wellness. I think right now people are more conscious of, oh yeah, maybe I should take care of myself mentally, spiritually, right? Because people are like, oh, I don't do that woo stuff. I've been woo all of my life, so it's been easier for me. Uh, but I think right now there's this great momentum for people to just be like, yeah, okay, I can do this, you know, and right on, right on.
Yeah, that support system. I think it's really hard to um say like how important the people watching are or listening, right? I mean, how's that been
Oh my
help?
God. So I mean, I've curated shows all of my life. You know, I've had a long career, and I've curated shows. I've participated in Art Basel, and let me tell you, I went to Art Basel. I put this amazing show together with amazing artists in this amazing art fair. It looked like this beautiful, it was amazing. Nobody showed up, right? We spent all this money. I corralled my artist, and I'm like, but I'm gonna stand right here waiting for whoever because I'm here. I'm here. We have to show up, right? So when there's zero people watching and you're still doing this, you have to pretend there's 1,000 people. You're still showing up because at the end of the day, even if there's 100 or 200 people, it's just you in the room. You know what I mean? And you're doing it from this place of love. But when people do start showing up, then you're like, oh, it's Karen. Like I have people who stop in all the time and come say hi, and I'm just like, Karen, hey Marie, hey Aaron, like all, and that just feeds my soul so much because I'm like, not only am I doing something that I love, but I get to have these people that I don't necessarily know personally yet because of the pandemic, but they're so part of my life right now. I have a friend in Australia, I have a friend in Nairobi who are like, yeah, we're gonna have dinner someday. You know what I mean? And that wouldn't have happened any other way.
Oh, that's so awesome. So even so basically what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that even when nobody's showing up, keep showing up and then eventually people will show up if you keep
Oh
standing
heck
there.
yeah. And and I think you also have to listen to where the people are so you can kind of meet them halfway. Don't wait for the mountain to come. Because some people don't get to share their art or become celebrated until after they're gone because they stood in the way of their work and people, right? You have to be able to open the door, right? I remember there's this great band that I listened to, the Cowboy Junkies, and they're super depressing, right? Like who would want to hear this? I do. So they were talking about like, oh yeah, our first concert, nobody came, right? But we performed because we loved it and we are happy to be on a stage and have that platform, and nobody came. Eventually, people, found it and found the beauty in it, and now they're pretty famous, or we're pretty famous. Uh, but you have to do that. And again, I think that's really big. The little wisdom nugget that just came out of that. You really shouldn't stand in the way of your work, because a lot of people stand on ceremony. They don't want to commercialize their work. They don't want to talk about it. But secretly, of course, they want to be recognized. Of course, they want their work to be on a gallery wall or in a museum. That only happens when you're willing to talk to people, right?
Hmm. So, do you have any ideas for people out there right before we get on and check out some of your work? Do you have any ways that maybe some of the artists out there could go and talk to some people, or like what some ways or things they might want to think about?
Yeah. So again, I mean, Instagram right now is amazing, right? All these social media. I have a great friend who I've met through Instagram, who I also interviewed in my podcast. His name is Aaron as well. Super talented collage artist. And he tells me that he just point blank engages with other collage artists. He's just like, hey, what did you use here? Some people get terrified because they think you're, infringing on their creative property or whatever, but other people will be receptive. And one thing, so I'm saying reach out, always reach out. Don't stop reaching out. And one thing I've learned from podcasting is that I find the people I want to interview on Instagram, like something gravitates me, their work, their energy, whatever. Um, and I always find that they're either from California or they lived in New York, or there's always some connection, right? So no matter what, again, you have to trust that like attracts like, right? So if you're into like My Little Pony and like, RoboCop, I don't know. Believe me, there are other people that have the same passion. And one thing I told a friend because he was really upset he didn't have a boyfriend or whatever. I was like, listen, don't worry about it. There's a market for everything. You know what I mean? There's a market. So don't try to get perfect. Don't try to fit into this genre. No, no, no. There is somebody looking for you right now. Like someone is looking for a jacket that's like crazy colors and collagey, So just reach out. Honestly, I think artists, uh, because even if we don't speak the same language, we speak the same language, you know?
Hmm. Well, I think that's interesting to Henrietta's question. What if you're into everything? And I
That's
and I think
perfect.
it goes. I think this goes back to your idea about trust, right?
Yeah. I literally have everything in my jacket, right? Again, like totally self-promoting, but it's truth. I remember when I was a kid, I had in my bedroom, I collaged a huge wall, and uh, someone was visiting my parents. They came up to see my wall, and they're like, "Oh wow, you have almost everything except Hillary and Bill Clinton." I'm like, "No, no, they're there," and I showed them. I happened to be there, and that's what they were thinking. That's what they saw, So even if you think you're into everything, believe me, you're into everything in a very curated way that you're probably not even aware yet. Like you said, trust it.
That's so interesting. Everything in a curated way, because it's
Yeah.
everything for you. Like everything for each of us is everything, but there's whole other everythings out there.
Oh yes. Then we go into
We're,
quantum physics and parallel lives.
if you want,
No, that's all I know.
okay. Not maybe let's check out your work, and if it comes up, feel
Sure,
free.
yeah.
How's that?
Awesome. So with this, it's so funny when you ask for my work, for whatever reason, I sent you a bunch of paintings and I haven't really painted. So I think subconsciously I was like, oh, maybe I should paint again. So this is a painting, and it's a painting that I made based on a collage. So if you're a painter and you don't know what to paint, collage, and then paint from your collage. So I use my collage as my sketch. I don't collage on the painting, but I use it as my sketch. And this kind of opened a lot of doors for me as far as my practice. Um, Now I don't paint because I don't have the space, and I had a flood and lost some paintings, and I rationalized it, and I said, you know what? I don't live in a city that's conducive to big art. I should not fight that. I should just take that as a clue and work smaller. I don't like to paint small. So I said, I'm just going to make collages like crazy. And that's how I got here, right? That's how I collage so much. I have fantasies of like, moving to the desert and painting monumental paintings, and I'll do that, but not right now. So this painting is basically that. It's relatively small, but for New York, it's a big painting. It's like what, 2 by 3, and you're like, what am I gonna do with this? Where am I gonna store it? Which is how it ended up in a flood. But so yeah, so my collages are very much about stream of consciousness and kind of hiding the face, because when I hide the face, I feel that more people can relate to it, and it opens more to reflection.
Interesting. Interesting. Hiding the face opens it to reflection. That's an interesting. You talked about reflection before.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel that we live in a very polarized world, and it, it's hard to sometimes see your reflection in someone that doesn't look like you, or someone that doesn't speak like you, or someone who doesn't, play for the same team as you play. So to be able, as artists, we can do that without batting our eyes. So to be able to do that and present that, I think is really, really a fun thing to do. With this one as well, again, the face is kind of hidden. And again, it's kind of like this mystical journey, right? It's like a portal, it's a door. So I'm constantly inviting people in to these other realms.
Could you talk a little bit about these other realms that you speak of and how, yeah, just how they relate to you? Like what's your journey with these other realms? I'm curious.
Sure. So like I've been very lucky. My dad is very normal, very stable. I guess he's Catholic. My mother, on the other hand, is a very crazy, erratic woman. She's a witch and has always, had this influence on me. Before Harry Potter, like that was my world, right? Like there was actual wizard school and stuff. And I was neither, right? I wasn't with her, I wasn't with him. I led a very, even as a kid, I led a very like normal, independent life with my grandmother and my aunt. So I had both of these worlds, and I realized very early that spirituality, religion is kind of like a disco ball. They're all talking about the same thing, but there's different little facets, and you can see yourself in all of them if you allow yourself to see yourself in them. And that was really helpful because it allowed me to realize that, oh, I'm not a sinner. I'm not broken. No, I'm just kind of like here to have a good time for all intended purposes, just to make beautiful things. Because I think once you allow yourself to arrive at, oh, I'm an artist. This is what I do. And listen, you can also be a male person. You can be a firefighter. You can be a teacher. You can be a janitor, and do it with so much grace that, yeah, that's divine, right? So I've been really lucky. So as far as the other realms, it's kind of stepping out of like the skin, stepping out of like this hair, right? Like shaking it off and be like, oh, I'm more than this. And that's why it's something that's really hard to be boggled down by like politics and race issues, right? Because we're more than that. And right now it's very important we talk about it. It's very important we fight for it. But know how you can fight that without killing yourself spiritually, mentally, because it's depleting.
That's so important. I believe too how we can be beings on this planet and to speak of things that are beyond the what might be the arguments amongst the mortal people. So us mortals, but how do you find yourself speaking to these greater spiritual matters? Like what are some ways in which you find that you're able to find that connection?
I shut up. I just shut up and I lay there on the floor or on the bed for 15 minutes a day, and I allow myself to feel nothing, and that sounds, again, woo and simplistic. It's very hard, but when you allow yourself to just breathe and not be boggled down by the weight of your thoughts, the weight of your body, the weight of your fears. Like I have all of these quotes in my studio, and occasionally one will draw me in, and I'll have to think about it. But today I saw this one that every time I see it, I'm like, and it says, let yourself be, I can't remember the specific words, but it was like, let yourself be a representation of your hopes and dreams, not your fears, right? And it's like, oh wow, what would that look like, right? Because it's so easy to be afraid. It's always been easy to be afraid. Right now, it's no different than any other day. There's always been wars. There's always been atrocities. It's easy to be afraid. But when you can really be in tune with the things that you want that make you happy, and you're a result of that, then it just kind of opens that pathway, And even if it's in a small way, like, listen, this brings me so much joy. The fact that I can have coffee right now, like, I don't need anything else. Like right now, I'm happy. I'm talking to you. I'm having coffee. Like, and if you can appreciate that, then you'll appreciate, a new car or like a new house. Um, but I think being able to stand still and shutting up, because it's not only your voice that you have in here. You have your mother's voice, your father's voice, your neighbor's voice. the president's voice, the whatever's voice. So if you can like, then you'll really hear yourself, and that's where the magic starts.
That's beautiful. I feel like that's some really good advice for everybody out there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
To
that's
take
not
it,
me.
that's a
I didn't write that. That's just, when you shut up, you'll hear it too.
but I feel like that's really beautiful advice for everybody out there. I highly suggest that. Try it out, see what happens.
Yeah, let us
Can't
know.
lose. Can't
Yeah,
lose. It'll take you
absolutely.
15 minutes. Start. How's that?
Absolutely. And this is another one in that series that I did. So I did this in 2012. These are older paintings, and I had just moved into a studio in Bushwick, which was like the biggest thing. It wasn't my first studio, but it was a new studio, and it was all mine. And I was just really excited to really delve in, and I kind of came in with this intention of kind of just like, okay, I'm this is it. I have no excuse. I will not look for other excuse not to paint. I'm just gonna paint. And amazing things happened. Like the owner of the building was opening a new studio complex, and he invited me to be like the curator of the gallery that he was making for me specifically. I mean, it was just, again, when you open the door, people will meet you halfway. And I consciously went there with that intention. Like, okay, I'm gonna open the door. I'm gonna allow opportunity, and I'm gonna be in, all in, and when you show up, showing up is half the battle, right? Like, okay, I'm here. What else can I do? So it was really great. And these paintings were that. And again, I think they're very intricate work, and painting is like we were saying, it's something that kind of it depletes you, right? So after I paint for a good 5 hours, I might not be any good in interviewing somebody or making a collage. So kind of picking your time wisely, right? So when I became the curator for that space, I couldn't paint like this 5 days a week for 5 hours. So it was about, okay, that's fine. I can do this every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then those other days I'll be curator. All these different hats, literally. And that's fine. You're no less of an artist if you're also a mailman or a mailwoman, right? You can be all these things. And again, I've been really lucky that I've had good people in my life in different times. And the owner of that space, who I've lost contact with, he always told me, you're the what did he say? Because he was like this, he was a very animated, like, he was Cuban, but he had this very like gangster Italian vibe going on. And he's like, you're the tutti capo tutti. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, you can do it all. You can be a curator, you can be an artist, you can be blah blah blah. And I was like, thanks. Like, I was doing it already, but I had this like notion that, oh, I'm less of an artist because I'm curating, or I'm less of an artist because I have to do X, Y, and Z. So to hear from an external influence was very helpful, very encouraging and cathartic. So it was nice. So you can do pretty much anything. Like we were talking about that everything, it's a curated everything, right?
That's a really interesting idea. Do you find it's because you're talking about like time management with these different things that you're balancing? Do you find it good to kind of separate the days and be like, today I'm going to be a podcaster, today I'm going to be a collage artist, today I'm going to be a curator? Do you find
Yes.
yourself like separating days, or is it like morning and night, or?
I do it in days, but so there's a saying in business, because I read a lot of business books, because I thought, if art, and this was me before I was like committed, right? I was like, if art doesn't work out, I'll go into real estate. It didn't work out. Believe me, I'm not a real estate person. But there's this thing where people say, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. And if I say, oh, I want to start a podcast, it sounds like, oh shit, I'm not staying in my lane. No, but it is, because I'm driving the bus. I'm an artist. The podcast is going to be about art. If I did a podcast about real estate, then that's not staying in my lane, right? So even if on Monday I'm doing podcasting, I'm still doing it from the perspective of an artist. You know what I mean? If I'm doing collage on Tuesday, I'm still an artist because I'm making collages. So it all stems from there. Even the things that are not art related, again, if you do it with so much grace, it becomes an art. It becomes your authentic voice, you know? And you can't feel bad about that.
That's so interesting. So to still do it with the same spirit, just do the different things and do the
Absolutely.
different things the different days or morning and night and just speak from that same space, basically.
Absolutely. And I mean, I try to make collages every day. Like and I don't have to try because I really love it. So it's just that if you have, if you can hold something still while you're cutting, if you can, have good eyes, then you're good. That's all you need. Otherwise, you don't want to cut yourself. But uh, again, showing up, just show up to the studio, even if you just scribble on a piece of paper, it'll come in handy next time. It might be like a map that'll come in, handy next time.
Hmm.
Oh, I love this one. So this was a bigger painting. It was called a Cheesehead. And it was kind of about vanity and it was about hiding behind this ego that I was trying to take off at the time, I guess. And it's just really fun because with this one, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do an intervention because it's a glamorous little piece with like jewels and stuff. And my studio was in Bushwick, which is like a very grimy part of Brooklyn. So I took it and took pictures of it in an alley next to like a fire hydrant. I took it to Manhattan, put it on top of like a fruit stand and asked the person if I could take a picture of it, took a picture of it. So I kind of like had a moment with it. So that it's a fun painting to look at for me.
Wow. So it was kind of like it sounds like kind of a cathartic experience that you went through to make it and then to also to speak about it in these different locations. It was like something else. Was there like some other piece of the catharsis to that like element inside of yourself to have it in these different locations?
Well, you know what it is? Yes. When you're an artist and your nature is to create, sometimes we forget to stop and take one of the works that you've made and that you will continue making because that's what you have to do, um, and take it out of context and just look at it. Like, because even if you work fast or slow, I work really fast with collages, obviously. But if I take one and I put it on the wall and I look at it over time, it's going to change its meaning and it's going to reveal itself to me. And it's going to mean more, right? So when I took this painting, I think I was showing it to somebody or something, but then I thought, oh, how sad. I'm taking it from the studio into a plastic to another person's studio into the plastic. No one's going to see it because I don't have gallery representation. No one's going to get to enjoy it. So I thought, let me just take it out. So, and then I placed it in different places and people will always be curious. And if you're not, intimidating, people will come up to you and want to talk to you. I did a mural once, and that was that was the lesson that I got from that. I'm not a graffiti artist, so it was just a big painting. And the coolest part was that people came up to me, and one person actually came up to me, and they were like, "Is that your art?" I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Wow, bless your hands, bless your talent." And I thought, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, this is what art can be, So it felt very nice. I didn't do another one because it was just too much, but it was such a beautiful experience to realize that people are genuinely curious and will genuinely support you when you open the door, when you do it in a place that they can access you, you know?
That's so interesting. The place of access.
Yeah.
And how did that mural come about? Like what were the steps and how did you go about that, like your process? Because that just sounds like
Gee,
a really interesting experience.
thank you for asking that. So honestly, most of the big things that I've ever done have always been on my accord. Because, I think as artists, we're kind of taught to, okay, just make your work and a curator will find you and will discover you and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't trust that. I trust myself, but I don't trust that. So I, again, with the owner of the studio complex, he was having a conversation about like someone else making all these murals, and I was like, "Oh, you want a mural? I can make a mural." He's like, "Okay." And then I had all of the support I needed right there. It just came from that, from me having the gumption to say, I can do that, even though I'd never made a mural in my life. But it was that gumption, and it was that, you know what? And I already learned that lesson prior, right? If you want something, do it yourself. Because no one's gonna, no one's gonna pick you. You gotta pick yourself. And I learned that like on a daily basis. We're so used to sending these like open calls. No, don't send open calls. Start your own podcast, start your own virtual exhibit. You know what I mean? Because save your $35 submission fee and start your own thing. So that mural came from me saying I could do that.
So what are some lessons for anybody else out there who'd like to do a mural, who'd like to do their first mural? What were some things that you wish you would have known?
Ooh, gee. So honestly, I think make three. Do things in series because then there's a longevity to it. I just made one, and there was all this momentum, and it kind of just ended because I just wanted to make one, right? And I think I could have rode that parade a little bit longer because again, I was like, I can do this, and for this, I think I could get sponsored. So I contacted this company, Wix, that does websites. They were in the city. I already knew a little bit about them, and I had met them before. And I asked them, hey, I'm doing a mural. Can you guys sponsor me? They sponsored me. They threw a huge party. It coincided with an art festival in Brooklyn. So it was kind of like, all these things coming together. And again, it was from just me being open and being like, I can do that. And also asking, right? I can use this. I'm not going to go buy a house with it. I'm not going to go buy a shirt with it. I'm going to make art with it. And it doesn't matter. Like artists should be paid. If I want a shirt, I should be able to have a shirt, right? But, they were receptive and they sponsored me. So I think the problem is that sometimes we think from a lack mentality, like, oh no, I have to sell it, and I have to like, it has to be altruistic, non for profit. No, no, no. Like someone will pay you for it. You know what I mean? Like if you have the idea, think of the ideal place, think who needs to see it, who will benefit from seeing it, and who will want them to benefit from seeing it, right? I was with a bunch of artists, so I thought artists need websites, so maybe this website company will want to fund me, right? And they did. They threw a huge party, whatever. But I think don't imagine like worst case scenario, really on something so low risk, think like big, like, oh, okay, this is what I want. You know what I mean? No one's gonna die, no one's gonna go hungry. Just be like, okay, for my mural, I want a party, I want a mariachi, I want, pina coladas, whatever. And then you just cross it off, and if it doesn't work out. But if your goal is to paint a mural, do it, And I think it's also, again, thinking about who and how you want to share it. Because if you want to paint a mural about like, death and something dark, as beautiful as it may be, it might not appeal to someone who's going to give you a wall, right? So meet them halfway, like let it be about the beauty of death or, death in other cultures. I don't know, but you have to really have fun with it and ask for things, ask for what you want.
That's so beautiful. I think that's such an important lesson. As there's many artists on here, and I think there's something to be learned from the asking and dreaming. And my friend Moni just came on. I lived with him for a while in India.
Nice.
But it's just like asking, like, and dreaming. How do you let's look at this. We only have like maybe 3-4 minutes left.
Awesome.
I want to ask, how do you dream these things up? And let you say any last words that you'd like to share or inspirations with.
Sure. So, I mean, actually, this is a great painting to talk about dreams. You can't see it all, but it's two figures, and they're kind of melded together with like all these beautiful things. And it's called The Dowry. And it was a painting that I did of my husband and I when we got married, when it became legal. And it was about just being able to, in my spirit, in my head, say, you know what? Hey, I get that. This is us in our world. Like we need nobody's validation. This is what our union will mean, and let's move forward, right? So I think if you're an artist and you want to make things happen, if you, it really, I think dream sounds like such a simplistic and kind of like, yeah, just dream what you want. No, it's really about being comfortable with what you want, knowing why you want it, and going for it because that's the only way you're going to get it. No one gave me a wall. I asked for it. No one gave me a solo show. I presented myself and said, hey, I'm an artist and I'm open to having a solo show, because that's how it works for some of us. And for most of us. I mean, sometimes we see people and they're like, oh, they've been handed everything. Maybe, but we don't know the story. I don't know what you went through this morning. You don't know what I went through this morning. Uh, so I think it's important to show up in that way for yourself.
That's that's so interesting to say, just like you need to know what you want, and
Big
then
time.
how might it coincide with other people's what they want, and like meeting people halfway on the mural, or finding a
Yeah.
way, like who else would like to see it, and finding these like other parties who want the same thing as you in or a similar
Yeah.
path in that way. Other companies, other groups, other somebody wants that thing on their wall. Somebody wants that. There's somebody who's gonna want it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think because it comes so easy to artists, we forget that not everybody can make art.
Right. Not everybody's making it so often, or just like putting their heart and soul into it. People put their
Exactly.
hearts and souls into a lot of things
Exactly.
in life. Uh, so we probably have 2 minutes left. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to share or say or promote, your podcast, your art
Sure.
collage days?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I have my podcast called Studio Confessions. I'm on Instagram at Art Engineer. I go live every Sunday at 1 EST and I collage and it's really silly. And on Wednesdays, I do a small version of that at noon EST, and it's just really fun. And I think the biggest thing of that is just sometimes I show up not knowing what I'm going to do, and that's cool, and that's perfectly fine. So, as an artist, I think it's okay not to know what we're doing as long as we're doing it and it happens, art will happen.
Art will happen. What a line.
Isn't that
Do
great?
it
There we
and show
go.
up and art will happen.
Yeah.
That's good. Do it and art will happen. So I'm at Aaron Jack Line Art. If you're not following one of us right now, make sure to go follow both of us, because that's really important. Just, you know, if you're not following one, follow the other. Uh,
Awesome.
Go do that before it ends. Um, I'm coming up on number 50 of these interviews on Thursday. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you for uh, being here along the way of this journey. Thank you all for supporting. So I'll be with Kat, from the founder of Create Magazine, on Thursday at Freedom Tapestry Project, where we have a lot of artists and tech people from around the world. Um, it's Sami is on here. She's one of the curators for that. I think Ben was on here. He's in LA also. She's in Damascus. He's in LA. So it's a world group. Um,
Amazing.
so that's coming up on Thursday at 6 p.m. EST. So on the Eastern, 3 p.m. PST. We've been switching that to 12 to middle of day. I'll be on here next Tuesday with one or two more amazing people. We'll see what happens. Thank you. If you weren't checking out my earlier, if you weren't here for my earlier discussion with Betsy, go check that out. That was amazing. And last week with Mo Lee in Madrid, so go check those out. And I'm Aaron Jack. Last words are all yours.
Have fun. And congratulations. Amazing job and amazing that you created such a great network.
Thank you so much. And I hope more people, everybody who's watching this, check, check out your podcast. Like,
Thank you.
everybody should check out your podcast and check out more artists and
Yes.
more awesome people. Like, as the networks, connect, open up doors and hopefully for everybody who's watching, this opens up more ideas, more doors for all of you, just by going and connecting and reaching out and DMing and, just say, even just a message, a DM that says, "Oh, awesome, I like today," is really awesome. I mean, it certainly makes me feel good, and I'm sure you love it too. So
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
cool.
Ciao.
All right, ciao.
Be well.